Imagine writing like a $100,000 check to a fully licensed contractor to put this massive addition on your home.
Right. A totally normal thing people do every day.
Exactly. You check their website, you meet the foreman, everything seems entirely above board.
It all looks totally legitimate.
But then, a year later, you are sitting in a lawyer's office and you are literally on the verge of losing that same house in a devastating lawsuit.
All because the crew working on your roof didn't actually exist on paper.
Yeah, it is terrifying. And today we are looking at a brand new government brief that was just published in July 2026 by the iFraud Foundation.
Right. It's titled New York's Underground Construction Economy.
Yes, and we are going on a mission today to understand this massive, completely invisible financial system operating right under our noses on everyday construction sites.
It really is hidden in plain sight.
It is. We are going to figure out how this shadow economy actually works, how it actively harms honest workers and consumers like you, the listener, and what New York is trying to do to stop it.
Because it's a huge problem.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand why this is so dangerous, we really first have to look at the mechanical how.
Right, the logistics of it.
Yeah, like how does legitimate project revenue, clean money paid by a client for a building, actually vanish into an illegal cash economy?
Well, the mechanism relies entirely on exploiting the legitimate, highly tiered structure of the construction industry.
Okay, so like the different levels of subcontractors.
Exactly. The core model outlined in the brief operates through this dark network of labor brokers, shell companies, and complicit check cashing operation.
Complicit check cashing, got it.
So in a standard setup, a general contractor receives a large payment for a project. Now, to maximize their profit and avoid paying taxes or insurance, they farm out the actual physical work to a labor broker.
And what exactly is a labor broker in this context?
They act almost like a rogue underground temp agency. They have a roster of vulnerable, often undocumented or just desperate workers who are willing to work for cash. But to make this look legal on paper, the broker doesn't bill the contractor directly.
Because that would leave a trail.
Exactly. Instead, they run the money through these rapidly created shell entities.
Oh, wow. So these shell companies, they look like normal businesses on paper. Like they have an LLC registered with the state.
Yeah, they'll have a completely generic name like, Empire Drywall Services.
But I'm guessing they aren't actually providing any drywall services.
Not even close. The brief notes these entities possess absolutely no real corporate substance.
Meaning what, exactly?
I mean, they have minimal to zero reported payroll. They don't own trucks. They don't buy materials. They lack any genuine business activity that would justify the sheer volume of funds flowing into their accounts.
So they are basically just a front. Their
singular function is to serve as a financial funnel. The contractor writes a massive, legitimate-looking business check to the shell company for, quote-unquote, services rendered.
Right, so it looks good on the contractor's books.
Yes. And then the shell company takes that check to a complicit check cashing channel.
Wait, so not a bank?
No, we aren't talking about a standard bank here. These are specific operations willing to negotiate massive commercial checks for a steep fee.
Wow.
Yeah, they often take a 3 to 5% cut right off the top, literally just to look the other way.
I was trying to picture this logistical nightmare while reading the brief. The best way I can describe these shell companies is that they are like movie set facades, but with a massive industrial shredder in the back room.
Oh, that's a perfect way to look at it.
Right. From the street, the general contractor sees a perfectly normal business front. But you open the front door, and there's just no actual company inside.
Nothing but the shredder.
Exactly. A legitimate check goes in the front door, gets fed into the shredder, and gets converted into untraceable physical cash.
And that cash then goes out the alleyway in duffel bags to pay the labor broker.
Who then, just hands out envelopes of cash to 50 guys on a job site every Friday.
Pretty much, yeah.
But that leads me to a huge logistical question. How do they get away with this right out in the open? I mean, on active, bustling job sites where city inspectors or anyone walking by can literally see the workers pouring concrete.
What's fascinating here is that the cash conversion itself is what completely erases the accountability.
How so?
Well, in a legal business operation, there is a tightly bound paper trail. The state can draw a straight line from the employer to the specific worker on site to the exact wages paid.
Right, and then to the taxes and insurance.
Exactly, to the legal obligations owed. But the moment you introduce this labor broker model and convert the payroll to cash, You sever that paper trail entirely.
You just snip the line.
Yeah. There is no longer a documented connection between the people physically swinging the hammers and the entity that actually cashed the check.
You're cutting the string. So the state looks at the site, they see 100 workers, but when they look at the paperwork for the project, the contractor only claims to have like 5 guys on the payroll.
Yes, because they systematically cover their tracks by keeping 2 sets of books. It creates this highly sophisticated illusion of false compliance.
Wow.
The payroll and the revenue that they actually report to the government bears absolutely zero relationship to the massive workforce that is actively building the high-rise.
So they basically show the regulators one thing but do another.
They show state regulators a very small, compliant, fully insured operation on paper. Meanwhile, they are running a massive, untaxed cash operation in reality.
And this vanishing act with the duffel bags of cash, I mean, it isn't just a victimless paperwork trick, right?
Absolutely not.
It's not just a headache for state accountants who are missing out on some revenue. The brief lays out how this creates a massive destructive ripple effect that hits the entire economy, vulnerable workers and, everyday consumers.
It really does. The economic numbers detailed by the iFraud Foundation explain exactly why bad actors are willing to risk running these complex laundering schemes.
Because there's a lot of money on the table.
The financial incentives are staggering. Let's break down the specific overhead costs they are actively evading.
Okay, let's hear the numbers.
First, you have the federal payroll tax exposure, which includes employer and employee FICA. So that's your Social Security and Medicare contributions.
Like standard stuff.
That sits at a flat 15.3%. Next, you have the general liability premium exposure, which is tied to the company's gross receipts.
And how much is that usually?
That typically runs between 2 and 8%.
Just to pause and do the math there. By paying in cash off the books, this shadow contractor is immediately pocketing over 15% in federal taxes, plus another, up to 8% in liability insurance costs?
Exactly.
That alone is nearly a 25% competitive advantage before we even talk about profit margins.
And it gets worse. The most alarming number is the potential workers' compensation premium exposure.
Oh, because construction is so dangerous.
Right. In high-risk construction classes, think roofing, steel erection, or high-rise exterior work, that premium can easily range from 15% to 40% or more of the total payroll.
Wait. If one guy is paying up to 40% more on his labor costs just to legally exist and insure his crew, there is literally no way he wins a blind bid against a corrupt company.
You hit the nail on the head. Imagine 2 contractors bidding on the exact same municipal project.
Okay.
Contractor A is an honest, established business. They pay their taxes, they carry robust general liability, and they pay that steep 40% workers' comp premium to ensure their crew is fully protected if someone falls off scaffolding.
Doing everything by the book.
Exactly. But Contractor B is running a shell company labor broker scheme. Contractor B can severely underbid Contractor A, easily coming in hundreds of thousands of dollars cheaper.
Because they just don't have those costs.
Right, because they have magically erased 50 to 60% of their labor overhead by operating in the shadows.
So the honest business just gets boxed out.
The honest business simply cannot win the bid because the fundamental math just doesn't work.
The fraudulent contractor looks like a hero to the developer or the client because they are bringing the project in way under budget.
Yeah, everyone loves a low bid.
But they are doing it by entirely cheating the system. It completely destroys fair competition.
It does. This systemic fraud rewards non-compliance while actively punishing and weakening responsible employers who try to play by the rules.
Yeah.
And the brief emphasizes that this is fundamentally a human crisis, just as much as an economic one.
Because of the workers.
Exactly. These cash-paid crews are incredibly vulnerable. Because they technically do not exist on paper, they face rampant wage theft from these labor brokers.
That's awful.
They are routinely denied overtime pay for 60-hour weeks. And they lack the basic legal documentation needed to even prove who employed them or what job site they were on.
And if they get hurt on the job, construction is incredibly dangerous.
They have absolutely no workers' compensation protection.
None at all.
None. A worker paid in cash might shatter a leg or suffer a severe spinal injury on a site. When they arrive at the emergency room, they discover their quote-unquote employer has vanished.
Because the employer was just a shell company anyway.
Exactly. There is no valid coverage, and there is no accurate employment record to file a claim against.
So who pays for it?
The worker is left entirely without reliable protection, and the public hospital systems, which, are funded by taxpayers, ultimately end up absorbing those massive emergency medical costs.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I want to push back on this on behalf of the listener.
Okay, go for it.
I can hear someone thinking, you know, that is terrible for the worker, and it's definitely bad for the honest contractor who lost the bid. But if I hire a contractor to renovate my property and they decide to run a shady business, or one of their off-the-books workers gets hurt, that is the contractor's legal problem, right?
You would think so.
Right. So how does that actually land on the homeowner?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that assumption is precisely what makes this shadow economy so dangerous for the everyday consumer.
Okay, I'm listening.
The brief explicitly warns that, quote, the consumer often does not know the contractor is underinsured or uninsured until after the loss occurs.
Meaning after the house catches fire.
Or after the worker falls off the roof and is paralyzed, yes.
Oh my God.
Because these fraudulent operators are perfectly comfortable disregarding licensing and tax laws, they will readily hand a homeowner or a commercial client a fake certificate of insurance.
They just forge it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It might be entirely photoshopped. It might be expired. It might be completely inadequate for the risky scope of work being performed.
Unbelievable.
Or it might be tied to a totally unrelated shell entity that has no real assets.
So it's basically a worthless piece of paper.
Completely. And if a serious loss happens on your property, say a catastrophic injury, or the contractor causes severe structural damage to your neighbor's home, the plaintiff's lawyers will immediately realize the contractor's insurance is worthless and the shell company is empty.
So they come after who? You.
The liability doesn't just disappear into the ether, it shifts upstream. It exposes the property owner directly. You, the consumer, could find yourself facing a multi-million-dollar uninsured liability lawsuit. You are risking your life savings and your home, all because the contractor you hired was playing shell games with their payroll and insurance.
That is terrifying. I mean, you think you are doing everything perfectly. You ask to see their insurance paper. They hand you a document that looks completely official, and you have no idea it's just a prop from that movie set facade we talked about earlier.
Exactly. You are totally exposed.
So if the financial costs are this massive, the human costs are devastating, and the state clearly knows the mechanics of how this is happening. I mean, they wrote an entire brief detailing it. Why hasn't law enforcement just kicked down the doors and shut this network down?
The primary barrier lies in how government agencies are historically structured, and really how they process information.
What do you mean?
The brief highlights a critical vulnerability we can call the fragmentation of intelligence. Some call it the silo problem.
The silo problem. Okay.
New York actually possesses very strong enforcement authority across its various departments. The gap isn't a lack of laws or a lack of investigators.
Then what is it?
It's that the intelligence they gather is completely siloed from one another.
Oh, I see. I think I have another analogy for this one.
I love your analogies. Let's hear it.
It's like you have a bunch of state agencies, and they are all looking through different tiny keyholes into the exact same room.
Okay.
So the Department of Labor looks through their specific keyhole, and they see a worker complaining about unpaid overtime on a Tuesday.
Right.
Then the Workers' Compensation Board looks through a different keyhole and sees an uninsured injury report on a Thursday.
Exactly.
And then the tax department looks through another and notices a strange corporate tax discrepancy.
Spot on.
So every single agency sees a tiny, isolated slice of the problem, but nobody has the master key to open the door and see the massive elephant standing in the middle of the room.
That is exactly what is happening. Because standing alone, a single unpaid wage complaint or a lapsed insurance policy on a desk at a state agency, it might just look like a simple administrative error.
Yeah, just a one-off mistake by a disorganized business owner.
Right. The pattern of organized criminal conduct,
Yeah.
the shared corporate addresses, the overlapping shell entities, the reliance on the exact same check cashers, that only becomes visible when you actively connect those disparate records.
Which they aren't doing.
Which is why the brief highlights a major strategic shift that occurred in June 2026. This involves the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN.
Oh, okay. Fin in.
Federal financial regulators have now elevated off-the-books payroll and labor broker schemes into a major financial integrity concern. They are officially flagging the construction sector as high risk.
Wait, so the federal government is getting involved, but from the banking side.
Yes.
How exactly does that work? I mean, banks aren't inspecting job sites.
No, they aren't. But financial institutions are now being heavily directed by FinCEN to look for specific behavioral patterns rather than just processing isolated transactions.
Patterns of what?
Their algorithms are searching for activities like structuring,
What's structuring?
that's intentionally making repeated cash withdrawals just under the $10,000 reporting threshold to avoid triggering automatic IRS alerts.
Ah, so taking out $9,900 over and over.
Exactly. And they are looking for check cashing volume that just doesn't make any logical sense for the stated business operations.
Give me an example of that.
For example, a supposed drywall company cashing $500,000 a week, but they never buy any materials.
Oh, I see. So how exactly is a bank looking at a spreadsheet going to solve a localized physical construction site problem in New York?
This raises an important question, because the bank data is actually the master key to your keyhole analogy.
Oh, really?
Yes, financial intelligence creates the necessary network map that state agencies lack.
Or walk me through that.
When a bank's algorithm spots these red flags, they are legally required to generate a SAR, a suspicious activity report.
A SAR. Okay.
These SARs flow into a secure federal database, and that financial intelligence provides the critical missing link.
How does it link them?
It proves that the supposedly unrelated wage theft over here, the fake insurance certificate over there, and the tax evasion aren't just isolated administrative errors. They are deeply connected nodes in a coordinated financial network.
Because the one thing all these shell companies, labor brokers, and corrupt contractors have in common is that they all eventually have to move the money.
Exactly. The money trail is undeniable.
The physical work happens on the site, but the money moves through the banking system, and the banks have a front row seat to that movement.
Right. And the brief heavily argues that New York needs to align its state-level enforcement with this federal momentum.
Combine the data.
Yes. By combining state data like tax filings, labor complaints, licensing records, insurance policies, with this federal financial intelligence, they can build a holistic view.
And catch them faster.
They can intervene proactively, targeting the money flow before a worker gets catastrophically hurt or before a consumer faces a devastating loss.
Which brings us to a really difficult reality. Because identifying the communication problem is one thing, but how does New York actually fix the system?
That's the challenge.
Right. Government agencies are notoriously protective of their own turf. They hoard their own data, their own investigations. They basically hate sharing.
They do. Historically, yes.
And the last thing anyone wants is just another layer of slow-moving bureaucracy that achieves nothing.
Well, the brief is explicitly clear that the goal is not to create a new, cumbersome bureaucratic agency.
Okay, good.
This is where the iFraud Foundation positions itself. They act as a neutral, nonprofit convener.
So they just get people talking.
Basically, they do not have the power to direct investigations, and they don't threaten or replace any existing governmental authority, which really helps lower the defensive walls between the agencies.
No one feels threatened.
Right. Their designated role is to facilitate education, develop common fraud indicators that all agencies can recognize, and support responsible, legally compliant intelligence exchange.
So what are they actually doing?
The brief outlines a blueprint of highly practical actions, starting with establishing a standing cross-agency working group.
Meaning they actually force the Department of Labor, the Tax Department, and the Insurance Board into the same room to talk about trends and pass referrals back and forth.
Yes. They also advocate for expanding risk-based data matching.
What does that mean in practice?
Instead of waiting for a complaint to come in, this means proactively using software to compare reported payroll, unemployment filings, and tax information against visible, permitted project activity.
So they can automatically spot glaring discrepancies.
Exactly. If a company pulls a permit for a $50 million high-rise, but they only report 3 employees to the state, the system flags it immediately.
That makes total sense.
Most importantly, they recommend conducting coordinated joint enforcement operations.
Like going in together.
Yeah. If multiple violations appear connected through that financial network map we discussed, agencies shouldn't launch 5 separate uncoordinated investigations.
That would just tip them off.
Right. They should execute joint site visits, conduct parallel financial reviews, and issue records demands together.
It sounds like they are trying to formalize a massive behavioral shift through a 4-step process. The brief lays out convene, identify, pilot, and measure.
Yes, Those 4 steps.
But instead of just listing them, I mean, it really reads like a roadmap for changing how the state thinks.
It is a total culture shift.
Right. First, you convene, you bring all the territorial stakeholders to a neutral table.
Get everyone in the room.
Second, you figure out exactly what data you have, what the legal privacy barriers are to sharing it, and you target the worst offenders.
Exactly. Find the low-hanging fruit.
Third, you pilot, so you don't try to boil the ocean. You pick one specific zip code or one specific trade, like roofing, and you test run this coordinated data sharing in the real world to see if it works.
And then, the crucial final step is to measure.
To see if it actually did anything.
Yes, you have to rigorously evaluate the actual outcomes of the pilot. The state needs to know how much stolen tax revenue was recovered, how many vulnerable workers were brought into the legal system and protected,
Right.
and how much uninsured fraudulent activity was actually disrupted to level the playing field for legitimate tax-paying businesses.
So what does this all mean?
Yeah.
Conceptually, what we are talking about isn't rewriting the rulebook or passing a mountain of new, complex laws.
Not at all.
It is fundamentally about upgrading the communication infrastructure.
Yes, beautifully said.
It's like moving these state agencies from using isolated, static-filled walkie-talkies, where they can only talk to one person at a time, into a secure, shared group chat.
Oh, I love that. A group chat for fraud enforcement.
Yeah, suddenly all the data points instantly overlap, everyone can see the master plan, and the shell companies have nowhere left to hide.
Because everyone is finally looking at the same picture.
The iFraud brief actually summarizes this perfectly in its closing line. It says, "Fraud succeeds when government, industry, and communities each see only one piece. New York can see the whole picture by working together."
It is a powerful summation. It highlights that transparency and structural collaboration are really the only true antidotes to dismantling this kind of entrenched shadow economy.
Absolutely. And for you, the listener, there is a very practical, immediate takeaway here.
Definitely.
The next time you walk past a bustling construction site in your city, you will know to look beyond the surface level of the hard hats, the cranes, and the scaffolding.
There's a whole lot more going on.
You now understand the massive, invisible financial machinery that might be operating right in front of you.
Hiding in plain sight.
And more importantly, the next time you hire someone to renovate your property or fix your roof, you know exactly why it is absolutely essential to rigorously verify a contractor's legal entity.
And demand real, verifiable proof of insurance directly from their broker.
Yes, directly from the broker. It isn't just an annoying paperwork hurdle. It is literally the only way to protect yourself from catastrophic, unexpected liability.
That is the immediate practical reality for consumers.
Yeah.
But, if we pull back and look at the trajectory of where this enforcement technology is heading, there is a much larger, somewhat unsettling question here.
Oh, really? Unsettling how?
Well, we are talking about federal financial institutions and state agencies successfully building this highly interconnected, algorithm-driven system to track cash flows, labor movements, and real-time transaction patterns to catch construction fraud.
Right.
And it will likely work. But if the infrastructure exists to flag every structured withdrawal, cross-reference it with your labor footprint, and instantly map your financial network across multiple government agencies.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Right. Could this exact same blueprint eventually be weaponized to monitor entirely different, perfectly legal sectors of the gig economy?
Wow. That is a heavy thought.
How will this incredible capacity for surveillance fundamentally change our expectation of financial privacy in how we work, how we hire, and how we pay for everyday services?